The Search Podcast USA Edition series is sponsored by Ascen. Ascen is a top employer of record in North America that exclusively helps staffing and recruitment agencies hire contractors compliantly throughout the US and Canada. Ascen's all-in-one white-label platform handles onboarding, timesheets, payroll, benefits, insurance, invoicing, and optional financing so you can grow quickly in the US and Canada. Start growing your staffing agency in the US today with Ascen. Visit us at ascen.com.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Search Podcast, the first one I've done and I'm doing for 2026. Got a really good client on this one, someone that I've got a lot of respect for. They've done an incredible job with their journey in the US, but I'll let them take away an introduction of who they are.
Oh yeah, I'm Jamie Trevett, the CEO at Just Construction. Ultimately working across the construction space in the UK predominantly, how it first started, but now probably about 95% in the US. That's kind of where we're at. It's been a long, lengthy journey, but we're out 2026, kind of probably about 95% of the business is focused in the US.
Amazing. When did this all start? Let's go back a little bit, Jamie. So when did this all start with the US, and why did you decide, hold on a minute, the UK is not getting what we need, we're going to go stateside and give it our all instead?
I think we've always been a business that kind of pivots when you start seeing markets have a little bit of decline or whatnot, right? We've got a number of guys that have been with us for a long time, and there was a chap, Elliott Morris, who was working in the facade side in the UK for the best part of about 7 years at the time. He's been with us 10 now. And we were always kind of interested in the US because we worked with some of these large glazing contractors who operated internationally, or they had international operations. And we kind of got led into the US through one of our clients who asked us if it was something that we did. Naturally, at the time, we didn't. We had an honest conversation with them, but we said that we would look at it. And in doing so, the opportunity there was large, right? I'm sure that everybody says the same thing. It's a country that's got a lot of money in there. It's a massive opportunity for any industry. So about three and a half years ago, I said to him, look, have a look at it and see what you think. Let's do a little bit of a report, a bit of analysis on the market, the kind of opportunities for us. And in doing so, we said, great, let's kind of give it a stab. It was a one man show. The rest of the business, it was like 24, 25 people at the time. The rest of us worked in the UK. And we kind of allowed him as a bit of a side project, really, to start looking into the US. Then we started, having seen the kind of reports, the data that was there, we allowed him to start actively kind of recruiting in that space with clients of ours that operated in there. Yeah. And I think when he did his first placement, it was about $40,000. I almost fell off my chair. I was like,
what was his typical fee be in his market in the UK?
In the UK, anywhere from sort of 8 to 15 grand. So probably about 9 to about 10 grand, I would say, is an average fee in facade. Certainly when you're talking about estimators, project managers, site managers, that kind of, I want to say the typical kind of roles that you carry out in construction. And he basically placed a project manager for $40,000, and it was like, I was like, wow, this is astronomical. And typically, like any founder would do, you start getting overexcited, and you kind of, that's it, everybody's going into America. And lucky I had Tony with me. We kind of sat down and looked at what the opportunities were, and we kind of moved a few additional people into that market that were struggling a little bit in the UK anyway. There was a few contractors that had gone bust or pulled out of the London market, which meant that I don't want to say that their market was dead, but we had a chance to pivot these people one way or the other. They were either going to go into another market in the UK or move them into the US. And so moving them into the US, I think Ellis, in the first full quarter he was in there, I think he produced about £180,000, I think it was, in fees.
Yeah.
And so, look, again, I'm sure there's some exceptional recruiters in construction in the UK, but, big billers effectively really on the on the permanent side are probably doing about 200, 300,000 pounds, right? That's a good year. To do £180,000 in a quarter, you're sitting there going, right, the the world's our oyster, so to speak, or certainly the US is. So
Yeah, of course.
we basically slowly pivoted over the next 6 months. We pivoted into the US as we saw the decline from the UK, and that happened across multiple markets. You know, the year that we first moved in there as a business, we said, right, this is, you know, a strategic plan and direction for where we want to go. I think there was about 131 contractors went bust in the UK. It was a
Yeah,
record year, and some of those people have been going for 120 years. So it made sense for us, and I don't want to say some of it was luck in the sense of timing, but some of it
yeah,
was strategic. And we just kind of followed that path,
yeah,
continuing to move people as their markets kind of become a little bit more stagnant and moving them into America. And naturally, as you can imagine, you're on a sales floor and you're looking at your colleague who you used to compete with, who's now absolutely kicking your ass because his
yeah,
fees are 5 times the size. And so people started coming to us saying, look, I've looked at it, this is an opportunity. And so about 2 years ago, we decided to completely go into the US
fine.
wholeheartedly.
Yeah,
Only Sean, who's director for our specialist subcontract team, he's the only one that we left in the UK because he maintained a really solid desk. His clients are,
yeah.
loyal to him. So he's the only one that still continues to work in that market. But he does kind of cross transatlantic now at the moment. So it was
Did
about
you
2 years ago.
did you guys kind of find it pretty straightforward, or did you have any challenges? The fact that you were still based in the UK and then operating solely a US focused business, were you having any issues with staff and hours, or like just getting the deliverables that you would want to see?
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, anybody that tells you that there's not challenges is a liar because, of course, going into any market you don't really understand as much as you like to think you're a smart
Mm.
individual. You go into a new market with different expectations, like you say, from the UK, having to then get your staff to change hours. There was lots of pivots. So that was one, getting people to change hours. That was, of course, difficult because people have got home lives and kids and mortgages and
Yeah,
all the rest of that sort of stuff. So that was a bit of a tricky phase, but I think people saw the commercial opportunity, so they were happy with that. Then actually getting into the States, the one thing I always say to people now, and it was something somebody said to me I went to one of those networking events just to kind of understand what other people were doing in the space. And they said to me, don't underestimate how big the US is.
yeah,
Again, being naive and probably a little bit cocky, I was like, degree educated. I'm not stupid. I know how big it
yeah,
is. You don't. No matter how much what you do when you get in there, you think to yourself, well, we'll work the whole East Coast. Three of us will work the whole East Coast. That's ridiculous. It's an
yeah,
absolutely massive market. So there were challenges across the board with staffing, with hours, with the geographical locations we were actively going to work, how we're going to slice and dice the market. Do we go after, contractors on a national basis? Do we look at it in small sort of hubs? And at the beginning, I think we were probably a little bit not greedy, but wide-eyed, big-bellied, if you like. That
yeah,
the whole US is our oyster. So we worked, Ellis worked across the US, and to be fair to him, in that market, it's probably a little bit easier than some markets to operate across the board because of the size of some of the
yeah,
contractors. And he did well, but again, you're taking calls at 1 o'clock in the morning from people and having to get out of bed, and it didn't fly. So we eventually decided Central and Eastern was the best for us because we're based here.
yeah,
It's only sort of 5 or 6 hours behind. We can shift hours, and we would get about 50 to 60% of the day that we can kind of
yeah,
have that crossover. And did that for a while, and that was successful. And then, part of the plan was always to go into the States. I think there's a board over there, and I think I initially wrote on there, inside 6 months, we'll open up an office.
yeah,
Naive, to say
yeah.
the least. It took two
It's
years.
everyone's got the same intentions, everyone's got the same goals, and when they start looking at the US, they all want to kind of look at it in a way of the US is the US, it's a beast,
Yeah.
and it took me years to navigate even what we do around the US to make sure that we had it under control. And still, probably even today, we're still trying to navigate. It's tough. So yeah, I mean, from what you've experienced, what is taking you to where you are now, which is you've now got a huge team. Can you tell us a little bit more about that transition to where you've now kind of landed to stateside in Texas?
Yeah. It's common knowledge now. Obviously, it's been a while, but it was about a year ago, actually, just over a year ago, we were approached by a larger company called ASAP,
Yeah,
who effectively wanted to buy the business. Um, we went through all of those initial discussions. They came on board, and basically helped to fund the operation to move into the States, because again, it's not cheap, right? If anybody, it's okay if you're going to hire maybe one person remote and put them through a PEO or an EOR or whatever it's going to be, and not set up there.
Yeah.
We had different plans to effectively go and set up there and start building an American team in America on the ground as quick as possible. So ASAP funded that, and they've allowed us to kind of build a team, obviously working with yourselves to find some key people on the leadership side, and start building around that. And so that allowed us to kind of move quickly. And I think now we're sitting at about 10 or 11 people. I think we're 10 at the moment. We've had a little bit of a kind of restructure to bring in an additional BD and reduce the kind of recruit team. And so now, we're on the ground, been operating there for about 4 or 5 months. And, the challenges are still there. Of course they are. You've got a company that's being managed in the US, but obviously it's oversights from the UK.
Yeah.
And so there are challenges in various different aspects. Again, the US has a lot of cultural similarities to us, but there are a lot of cultural differences.
Yeah.
We might speak the same language, but there's, expectations and workloads and urgency, and the rest of it is slightly different. So that's been a challenge, but I love it. I think that the challenge of being out in the States, being in Austin, I know you guys were actually in the same office. I know you helped us with that. So, it's been a great challenge. It's been a really kind of positive reaction from our client base of the people that we worked with from the UK, now kind of transitioning to the US, and kind of handing that over to them. So it's been a positive experience so far, but 2026 is going to be a really big year for the business, because we've got, big ambitions, but naturally we need to get the core foundations correct, right? Because without doing that, you're just going to pump too much money in there and waste it.
Of course. Are your guys in the UK that are operating this, do they do a lot of travel to the States and meet clients, or have they
Not
done
at the
it for
moment.
years? No?
Not at the moment. I mean, we always, the plan was, of course, to do that, because you're never really going to build a proper relationship without getting out there, seeing people, pressing the flesh, probably a little bit of golf or whatever it's going to be that they want to do. So the plan was obviously to get the US business up and running first. So at least we had a hub. So what I don't want to do is just send somebody, go across to New York, see 3 clients, spend a week there, cost loads of money, and then come back, right? So it's not a waste of your time. Of course it's not. It's always the right thing to do. But what we wanted to do was, because obviously the structure that we've got with ASAP, we weren't able to kind of hire Brits straight off the bat because of the E2 structure. So we've got Americans on the ground, right? Which is great, of course. It's an American business. But in order to kind of really push your culture as a business, you need to get, the Brits on the ground. So we've had a few trips over there where I've taken certain individuals. I'm going over in a couple of weeks. And I'm taking Sean across, who, he'll be the first person that still kind of recruits, if you like, as a director. So that would be great, so they can see how he actually operates and whatnot. So that's going to be interesting. But I think the plan is throughout 2026 is to take key individuals, get out there and obviously start working in the market with the team, go and see clients from there, and start really kicking that off. In 2026, that's the plan.
Amazing. Because the way you've done it in terms of like the hiring over in the US, you obviously hired some really experienced, some really reputable recruiters, but you've also kind of gone the trainee junior route as well. How have you found that in the States? Because and the reason I'm asking is a lot of founders that have set up over there, they've had really stagnant growth. They haven't moved forward. They're always looking for that 360 recruiter from, your British firms, which comes few and far to do that. And it does stunt the growth of the company and what it's trying to do. But, I always say like bring in some juniors, like nurture some talent, really kind of utilize them to get that growth that you want. How have you found in doing that?
I think that our model in the UK was always the same. We've hired, 15 years we've been going as a business, and we've hired people from much larger competitors in the UK that are, experienced recruiters that come. And to be honest with you, I would say it's been a massive failure. All of the people that we've got in this business that have done well, that continue to do well, are people that we trained from scratch. I'm not saying that some people didn't have some levels of experience, but the vast majority of them are people that we train. So that we took that academy model. We worked with Greg, who's our non-exec. We built out an academy structure here in the UK. But again, because of the market, we never really got the chance to run a full academy, like bringing in 6, 8 people and kind of running it through. We did it with 2 or 3 at a time. So doing it this time, we basically took 6 grads that we brought in, and we trained them up for the first couple of months. I said we've made a couple of small changes to reduce that. Not by their own doing. I think it was just a business strategy that made sense. But it's been really positive. Again, culturally, there's a few differences that in how we'd expect them to operate, but not having, I don't want to say the British kind of drive on the ground. Kind of culture from the parent company is not necessarily there all the time. So, that's been a challenge, but we're starting to see some really good green shoots. We've got some good recruiters coming out of it. And we'll continue to work with those guys to develop them into solid recruiters, really. And that's going to be the key plan as we grow, bringing in business developers that have got experience. And then probably out of every 6 recruiters that we'll bring in one of those will be experienced, and the rest will probably be trainees.
Excellent. What's the plan? Are you ever going to do the UK market again or go for it? Or
yeah, I think that the aim's always to do that, right? Again, we discussed it with ASAP that the plan is to ultimately continue to drive the UK when it's ready, get back into the contract space here. But at the moment, it's just not showing enough for us to really start, pushing investment back into the market, which is sad because, as I said, for the best part of 13 years, we were, operating in this market for a long time in various different spaces in construction. So, we've got those relationships. The brand's still there. I think there's, still an appetite for us to grow the UK again. So that's still on the horizon, mate. I think we're going to continue to push the US for now for 2026 and see what happens kind of back end of 26 into 27. And if the signs are there for us to make that move back into the UK, then, we'll continue to do that.
last question for you, Jamie. What's the I know you said that this year's a big year. You've got to get things in motion. Where do you think you'll see or aiming to see the business back end of 26?
Well, I guess there's always a plan, and then there's a kind of realism, right, to where you're at. I think that the plan for us is to kind of get it to about 30, 35 headcount is the aim. That's the plan that we've got in place. We've got a plan of action to try to drive that. But again, I think with market conditions and everything else that's going to kind of be thrown at you, it's all about Q1's about stability. Let's get the business really functioning and doing what it needs to do in terms of revenue generation, becoming probably less reliant on parent company. And then throughout 2026 is growing that headcount progressively. The aim is to get there, but it's all going to be based on our momentum going into Q2. Really, that's going to kind of drive what the outlook for 2026 looks like. But ideally, growth. That's the plan, is to grow it. But again, as I said, there's an element of realism. So we'll see where we are at the end of Q1.
Always the way. Everyone says, where do you want to see yourself in a year's time? I don't know. I'd just like to see where I am at the end of this quarter at the moment.
How about tomorrow? We'll see where we are tomorrow.
Exactly.
Keep going, one foot in front of the other.
Well, look, if any recruiters are checking us out in Texas or anywhere in the US are interested in what these guys are doing, feel free to reach out to Jamie on LinkedIn. Everything will be tagged across all socials and all channels. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to help and answer them as well for you. Jamie, look, incredible what you've managed to achieve. Not many firms have done this, if any at all. And I look forward to seeing what you guys can do for the rest of this year. And we're in the same offices, so I'm sure I'll see you guys, constantly anyway.
Good man. We probably need to cross paths. Every time I'm out there, you're out there the following week. So I'm sure at some stage I'll see you throughout 2026.
I think I'm back there in March, April, so we'll try and see what we can do.
Oh, good man. I'll be back out there again then as well. So we'll do that. We'll try and tie up some diaries.
We'll line it up. Nice one, Jamie. Thank you very much for your time. Speak to you soon.
Thank you.